one of the things that was talked about earlier is this idea that there's kind of a Western narrative going on around NFTs and crypto, and then there's kind of a different Eastern narrative around gaming. And I know that when it comes to things like regulation, it's different in different territories. So, in that impacts things like VCORE. So,
Sure.
wondering if you could talk a bit about that.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I think it's a huge kind of topic for us, MetaJuice, because, and Together Labs, because, the first thing is we want to be regulatory compliant globally around the world and really need to be because our user base, our millions of monthly users are a global user base, a global community. And so it's real critical that they can all interact with each other in seamless ways. Uh, you know, it's interesting you bring up the Western narrative and kind of approach versus the Eastern one. I will say things like the regulatory environment in the US is not very clear. That's probably an understatement. It's not real kind of understood what is allowed, not allowed, uh, what kind of will help move the industry forward, what won't. Whereas on Eastern regions of the world, even some Western countries outside of the US, the regulations and the rules of the road, if you will, are much more clear. And you just need accelerated, engagement when that's the case. VCORE, our new asset, will be initially available only to non-US and non-Canadian users, buyers on our platform. That's not how we want it to kind of start out, but it's the way it has to, just given the regulatory environment in the US. And so we'll have a majority of our users will be able to engage with each other via VCORE. We do have an asset though called Bitcoin, which is like a digital cash for the metaverse, which does have more or less global usage and global kind of regulatory compliance. In fact, we earned a no action letter from the SEC a few years ago that, as long as we follow that no action letter, really makes Bitcoin a really highly compliant asset. And so while VCORE won't initially be available to US persons, the access to NFTs and minting and secondary primary markets and everything else running, that will be accessible by the US users. They just won't be able to engage directly with VCORE until further notice, right?
Right.
Until the environment changes around you.
And VCORE is an ERC20 token. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, you know what? I think the best way to think about it, it is a token that runs on the Ethereum blockchain, or it's an Ethereum token. And the ERC20, I'll call it kind of its standard, is really the primary standard for utility tokens. And as you're aware, the Ethereum-based tokens, ERC20 tokens, is the most prevalent set of tokens globally. So these kind of really stand. There are some very cool new layer one protocols that are trying to kind of, come after Ethereum a little bit, but it is the right way to launch a token these days. So while we're open to various blockchain technologies, both Bitcoin and VCORE are ERC20.
Right. And we know that Ethereum has just changed from proof of work to proof of stake. Has that changed the industry at all?
Yeah, I think it has, and I think it will. Uh, you know, with that change to Ethereum 2.0, and to your point, or to a proof of stake approach, authenticating the blockchain, it changes a lot of things. The cost of an Ethereum transaction, on the blockchain went down dramatically. The speed of transactions has gone up a lot. It's much quicker to do transactions on the Ethereum blockchain. And then because we're all very conscious of the environment, the amount of energy needed, right? The environmental impact of Ethereum transactions now, after the 2.0 standard has gone into place, is also dramatically lowered. So it's all good news for the space. We think there's still a lot of need for some other blockchain technologies like immutable Polygon or others that help enable even faster and lower cost, lower energy use environments for crypto assets. But it was a huge move forward for the blockchain space. Have the Ethereum 2.0 moves so.
Yeah, I would have thought that when it happens, that there would have been a big spike in people buying it up, but it actually kind of took a bit of a dip. What do you think that was behind that?
I think there's a lot of things going on. I think one thing we've learned about the crypto or the blockchain markets and asset values is they are highly correlated to the more traditional markets. or even the global economy, right? So if the world from an economic perspective isn't doing as good as it was, a year ago, then I think that's reflected in the value and uptake and the purchasing of crypto assets as well. So whether it's the stock markets of the world, or it's the inflation rates of the world, or it's the disposable income that users have around the world, when if
Yeah.
that gets depressed, it will affect the spaces that we're in.
Yeah. But see, I find that really interesting because I feel like initially crypto was meant to be detached from those markets. And but we're actually seeing that
I
correlation.
think we're seeing a lot more correlation than some of the early, you know, players believe there would be. I mean, and there's different types of assets in the blockchain space, right? I mean, Bitcoin is a very different asset than the assets we have, Bitcoin or before. But yeah, I think there was a belief, right? Or a hope even that it would be much less correlated, right? A
Yeah.
hedge, if you will. Right? I think what we found is that it's a lot of the same people, as you might imagine, or enterprises or others, institutions that are people that are live in both worlds, right?
Yeah.
In the more traditional real world versus this virtual blockchain. So a lot more light than they are.
Well, and one of the things on the news this morning was about FTX needing a bailout, which I think surprised a lot of people because they were kind of like the golden child
Wow.
of this industry.
Yeah,
And yeah, wondering if you have a comment on that. That's kind of topical.
it's too bad. It's
Yeah.
too bad. I mean, I'm old enough, to have been around a lot of uh, evolution of these technology spaces, right? I was early internet when the first browsers were coming out, and we saw, the industry at times get, I'll say, reset itself, where lots of companies were created and value was wiped out. But you had a kind of a reset into the high quality, high value companies. I was around early mobile when the first color phones and phones that ran applications were coming to the US market. And we saw a lot of growth in companies and then there's kind of a clearing out of some companies that maybe wouldn't exist for a while. So as we see this in crypto, part of it looks like a model I've seen, but then it's tough when you see some companies that you believe were well run also get cleared out. You know what I mean? And I think you're right. My sense too, FTX is one of the shining stars, was top two, three exchanges in the world, uh, clearly behind Binance, but to see run into issues,
Yeah.
solvency issues, really a surprise. And I think, have this belief you companies, people shouldn't get too far ahead of themselves. Stay within yourself, stay within your business line, because we've seen companies get overly aggressive, believe the good times won't go away too quickly, and you can overextend yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
My gut is that's kind of what appears to have happened. Lots of these different crypto companies that I think are great companies that have probably been overextended and now are running into some issues.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, I think about the internet space and its evolution over the last, 25 years. Yeah, all that set of ebbs and flows and things get kind of cut back down and things grow again. And that will happen in this space too. So the optimism around blockchain technologies, crypto assets, how they'll fit into NFTs, the way I see it, having watched these cycles over and over again is, yeah, some parts of the ecosystem will be different going forward, but it will continue to grow. I see no slowing down of that. And here, being in London this week for Token 2049, and almost every conference I'm at, the energy is always so high. And thousands of people flying from around the world to get together. The investments are super high. Engagement partnerships are being worked out. Uh, it's almost impossible to believe that things won't continue to grow time. There'll be these dips, right, in the market or
Yeah.
industries, but I think it's going to be.
Well, the core technology is not going anywhere. It's only going to
I
get
agree.
bigger. It's only going to grow. I do think we are at the beginning stages where we're kind of, scratching the surface of what's possible. And when it comes to things like NFTs, we're going to see a huge evolution of what they become and all the possibilities that they open up. And I think there's a lot that we probably haven't even thought about yet that we'll see in the next 10 to 20 years.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. The early phases of NFTs where NFTs are bought and sold are the ones that get the buzz, are sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That may still be part of the industry, but we believe that the core part, your point, this evolution will be, and this will be true in the metaverse, certainly an IMVU, be that we'll be selling our users, our community will be selling millions of NFTs, but for, $1, $5, $10. Some of them might be resold for $200, $300. But the truth is it'll be a broad market that will be buying NFTs and engaging with each other and really wanting true ownership at a whole different price point than maybe we saw over the last year. So it'll be exciting to see NFTs really kind of take its place across this broader landscape where it won't just be the super expensive items. There'll be a broad set of different digital assets purchased in NFT form.
And are you seeing NFTs being developed that have utility outside of metaverse environments, inside kind of real life environments?
Yeah, I think we certainly are. We certainly are. I think if that'll also be an evolution too, probably, right? There's everything from if I buy a digital item in the metaverse, say a digital dress, could I maybe get a actual real version of that dress in real life too?
What does dress look like,
I don't know. And could it be sent? Yeah, could it be sent to me? Um, there's that discussion. Of course, there's art works that way. You could buy an NFT item and potentially own the actual physical art. I'll share too. A lot of these conferences, it's pretty interesting to see NFTs cross into the real world. As an example, we might hold an event at a nightclub here in London and say anybody with this NFT, with a unique IMVU NFT, is allowed at the event for free.
Yeah.
And you can come on into the event. It's only for those that hold this unique NFT, this asset from the IMVU metaverse. We've seen people do that around Bored Apes and other fun NFTs that are very popular. And so I think there will be crossovers between the virtual world and the real world as people add additional value to these NFTs.
I saw Citizen M hotels. So they are building hotels inside metaverses, but anybody who buys into it also then gets discounts on the hotels when they go to different places around the world, which I think is really clever.
I think it is smart. I think it is smart. I think a lot of, as we have discussed in the past, I think a lot of brands, companies, and others are wanting to do cool things in the metaverse. And one cool thing to do is to try to cross it over. How do they cross that over into the real world?
Yeah.
And a thing like that, that makes a lot of sense. It's clever.
So one of the questions that I've been getting recently is around this idea that we were told, kind of in a way, that we were in a shared economy. That we went through like a phase around 5, 10 years ago where it was all about Uber and Spotify, kind of like not owning DVDs or CD or our own car, that we were sharing these things. And now with NFTs being true ownership, it seems like we're shifting back into an ownership economy. So how did this? What's your thoughts on that? Is that where we're going? And what are the benefits of going back to true ownership?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great question, fun one to think about and discuss. Yeah, there's no question that the mindset of ownership around certain asset types has shifted, right? Yeah. Music that you bring up is a great one where, we all have owned music in the past, and now with a Spotify account or SoundCloud or whatever your platform of choice is, yeah, you're much more likely to rent in a sense, right? To kind of pay a monthly fee for access to this. I think the unique part that NFTs enable is really true ownership in this virtual space for the first time, where that ownership can be taken outside of a closed loop, right? Outside of a closed application. So at IMVU, as an example, the ownership of these NFTs will go on, even take the item out of the IMVU metaverse, which is unique. So it kind of, defies a little bit of time and place that ownership does. I personally think what will happen is it'll be a combination of these, what do you want to call it, rental models or these shared models of ownership where certain assets you may just engage with and you don't want to own them all. And I'll say music as an example. I think a lot of us want access to thousands, some people maybe millions of songs. It's hard to own all those, right? Much more way to engage with music as we've seen. Music's probably never been more popular. The engaging um, with shared model, right? Or a rental type model. Whereas assets in the metaverse, certain assets, say digital items that your avatar owns or that your virtual room holds, the furniture that you've purchased, it may make more sense in some cases to have a true ownership model. Uh, And so it'll be interesting to see those kind of work together.
Yeah. Well, I guess to that point too, for the creators with true ownership and NFT models, they have the option to actually get residuals when it gets bought and sold. And at the moment, I think these are kind of like opt-in services that you like that's something that people can opt in to get those residuals every time it gets bought and sold.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. It's an interesting point, right? Now,
or
the contrast kind of brought up with music, I think it's a good one. Whereas there's a whole industry trying to make sure that, ASCAP and BMI, I won't go into the music industry too deeply, but, where they're really trying to uh, reward, pay the artists, the creators of that music, those songs over a long period of time. There's almost like the police around the music industry trying to make sure people get paid, right,
right, right,
over a long period of time. Uh, that's just starting to happen in my opinion, in the digital world, in the virtual world, enabled by NFTs. Right, and
right.
to your point, certain NFT platforms or NFT, collections come with that residual built into them, right?
Mm,
Where we try to reward, and we're doing that at IMVU too. We're secondary sales that happen in our environment, so the ones that we can kind of semi-control or see. We want the creators to be rewarding every time that NFT changes hands. I think that's important.
yeah. And so, what is kind of the schedule for the rollout of B4? What's next?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, I think what's interesting about our ecosystem is that all these assets tie together. So I'll share briefly here first kind of the NFT rollout. As I've mentioned, we've gone live with NFTs on all of our mobile platforms and desktop platforms. What launches here next is we're calling phase two, is where creators will be able to sell one of many NFTs. So when they upload, say, the shirt, they can say, you know what, I want to mint 100 of those items and make it exclusive, but there will be 100, not just one of one. That's phase three is we'll actually be building in the NFT capabilities directly into the creator tools. So when a user uploads their creations, their items to be sold in the marketplace, they can just click, click, click and make that item an NFT. So there's a nice evolution there. We'll be launching functionality with VCORE here in first part of 2023. There'll be full utility and functionality of VCORE even before VCORE is officially available in the market.
Okay.
We want to ensure that there's ways to use it the moment it's in the hands of our users.
Yeah.
Uh, and so expect to see kind of VCORE functionality early next year in the IMVU ecosystem, and then VCORE to be released more publicly, right, broadly into our ecosystem thereafter.
Great. Excited for that. And finally, you have also recently been nominated for European Metaverse Award. Congratulations.
So we're coming off a great, couple year run here. IMVU and the metaverse, I think, really showed its utility, really showed its value to the world during really the toughest part of the pandemic. I'll go back or two here. When users were kind of, when the community was ample and
Right.
wanted to still engage with people online, we saw our usage grow and engagement in our ecosystem. And then as we've started to release Bitcoin first, NFTs, and soon here VCORE, we really believe we've kind of set up our metaverse, our ecosystem for the future. Right? We call it the future economy or the future engagement of the metaverse. And I think that's what we're being rewarded for, right? We're seeing awards last year, or actually this year in 2022. Time picked us as one of the 4 Web3 companies kind of shaping the future. And so these other awards that come along with that, I think are right in that category. So
Yeah.
we're super, super proud to be part of that.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, John. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you all so much for watching and tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Take care.